Oh, there we go. Is somebody else the host there? Might have been Kristen.
Yeah, I think I am. I'm gonna switch it to you because I don't want to be.
Okay. All right. We're good.
Okay, so Monday, March 31st, 2025, the Harbor Plan Update Committee called to order at 1:07 PM. I'm acting chair until Linda Williams gets here. She should be here pretty soon, but we might as well get started. I guess we have to do a roll call. Peter?
Here.
Let's see who else. Oh, we have Dave Franzuto.
Here.
We have Emily Molden.
Here, I'm here.
Steve Lineback.
Here.
I think that's it. Is that correct? Or Jerry? Is Jerry?
Jerry's not on the.
Jerry's observer. And myself, so that makes it 5. A quorum.
Yes.
And so we are going to first of all, I guess we have a quorum and we have approved the agenda. And I think the agenda is essentially, we're going to be going through recommendations for public access, commercial and recreational fishing, commercial waterfronts, boating and navigation, coastal resiliency, administrative and coordination, and then discuss next steps. I don't think we're going to get through all the recommendations. However, we can try. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second? Second by Emily. Approval, Peter? Of the agenda?
Yes. Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. Okay. We do not have minutes to approve. Peter was unable to find our last meeting on YouTube, so I guess that needs to be sorted out. Peter, do you want to say anything more about that?
No, it's just very frustrating when they get there and they don't find him. That's all.
I sent it over. There's a new person that I guess is putting them up, and I sent it to that new person. So I can check back in, but I can send it again.
Okay, the first thing, I guess we want to just looking at where we left off from last time. And let's see here. I guess we left off on March 17th on
I can tell you, sorry, I was just checking.
I've got it right here, public access. We were discussing goal number 1, objective number 1, and we had stopped at recommendation number 3. Is that correct, Tim?
I think we got through recommendation 4. So starting up on recommendation 5.
Okay.
And
Now you have a list there of which ones people want to talk about?
Yes, I do. Which I think we kind of, at the end of the day, it's almost that we want to look which it is going to get a bit time consuming to be able to go through all of them. I don't know if anybody has a suggestion as to the best way to get through all of them, but in a prompt manner.
Well, I will say, Kim, that I went through all the recommendations and maybe they were out there, but there were an awful lot that I don't remember us ever talking about any of them. And I thought, boy, we're gonna, this is maybe the first time the committee is gonna actually see some of these. So anyhow, there's an awful lot of, I mean, this is the heart of the of the report, I think, and there are just an awful lot of recommendations that I think people are gonna wanna talk about. So I don't think we're gonna get through them all, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think we'll get through all of the rest of them today. I just put the list there as kind of just the standing list of what was left. Yeah, we won't get through all of them today, but we can start with recommendation 5 and try to move as quickly as we can through them while making sure that we're addressing people's comments.
Okay, you wanna,
Okay, so I think recommendation 5, I think Phil wanted to talk about this one.
um. I think, there was, Kim, maybe you can look through these recommendations. My sense was when I saw number 5, I thought this is gonna be a lot of these recommendations could, some of these could be combined. In terms of public access guides and websites and stuff. I think there's more than just recommendation number 5, but anyhow, we can go through it and see if there's another one that looks like it, but, on number 1, 2, 3, and 4, was there anything similar to what 5 has? 1 was recommend, educational materials. Recommendation 2 is public media. 3 is harbor walk. 4 is utilize data sets.
Are we looking at the right? Well, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 for public access. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I know that roads and right of way will have something to say about number 5, so we'll see what they have to say. I think what the idea is that maybe there can be a way to have these public access guides not have to be printed anymore, but may be available on a phone. I mean, everything is on a phone these days, but I think that's something roads and right of way will weigh in on.
Yep, that's possible.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if anybody else wants to,
You mean,
add
you mean
anything.
not having them posted? Not having a right of way posted that you would have to,
Well, I guess the question is would we, are we at a point technologically where something like this can be on a website and not necessarily have to be printed, that's gonna be out of date the day after it's printed? It's a possibility, I don't know.
maybe just lesser amounts of printed material and realizing that not everybody has a phone.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I know roads and right of way will say something about that, so we can go on.
Okay, number 6, I think also, I think Phil was a number of these, but I think Phil, you were number 6, and then moving on to 7, I think some other people had highlighted.
I'm not quite sure what 6 is supposed to accomplish.
I can jump in here since public access was my section. This one is specifically looking at vulnerable public access in the context of climate change and making sure that as folks are thinking about access and as folks are thinking about climate change, they're considering the nexus of the two.
Okay. Seven, do we have anything for 7?
Okay, 7, I think Steve wanted to talk about.
It just seemed very vague to me. Enhanced programming and amenities at existing public sites, public access sites as appropriate.
Steve, if you remember an earlier version of this plan, we had like a page and a half of sites with specific improvements. And the committee asked that we don't include that list because they don't want to be on the hook for actually having to make all of those improvements. So I sent the list to Jeff and to Phil as town and roads and rights of way committee heads. So they're the keepers of that list.
Okay.
We can talk about putting in some examples or something like that. But I
Can
just
we
wanted
make-
the history on why that recommendation is the way it is.
Should the list be an addendum and just say refer to addendum number or something?
I think the point was that people didn't want it in writing in the plan at all. If folks who objected to that list, if you want to say
Then why do-
anything more.
Okay, I don't get, we have a recommend. Okay,
I would say, and I don't know whether this Roads and Right of Way will probably say, one of the things Roads and Right of Way has really been very good at is making sure that the public access sites are marked with a physical marker. And one of the problems is over time, these markers disappear, get damaged or whatever. And I think that that's something the committee will probably have an opinion on, but a lot of these public access site points need to be more clearly designated so people know that they are actually not on private property, but there's a public access point.
Yes, but you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the Roads and Right of Way Committee, they found all the public ways. They found public ways that neighbors on either side had let their vegetation come to the middle of.
Yep.
And they, with legal help, identified these ways and reached out to the property owners and said, we are going to remove your privet and your rose bushes, and we are going to mark this spot, and we're going to give people access to the water. And all the ones that they were able to perfect, they put a granite post in the ground, a thick, like curbing granite post that says public way down it. So there's a lot of them are marked, and
There are 34 of them, but this is an ongoing thing and they're actually still having to do that. In other words,
yeah,
not surprisingly, landscapers have, put privets over them, and so the problem is still, is still there. So they're still working on it. And actually, there's now a person who is made last name is McDonald, and she's been very helpful. And she took over Ken Bogran's spot in terms of sorting out, where the property lines are. Tracy McDonald, yeah. She's been very helpful, and there have been a couple of instances where we've actually had to go to property owners and say, hey, this is access primarily out on Wisconsin Bluff. So anyhow, okay. 8,
Sorry, if I could just go back to 7 real quick. I understand what you guys are saying about the signs, but that recommendation wasn't really about signage. It was more the comments we heard about expanding access for things like boat launching and expanding parking and adding benches and that type of thing. So when it says programming and amenities, it's not talking about signage. I think signage is addressed elsewhere in the recommendations. So just, Steve makes a good point that as the recommendation is written, it's pretty vague. Do we want to add anything referencing a list that was developed and distributed to the town and the committee, or do we want to just leave it alone?
Recommendation number 7 in public access.
well, why don't we see what Roads and Right of Way wants to do on that, okay?
Okay.
And Kristen, is there recommendation about signing these places?
I believe there is. I'd have to go back up and look at the others.
Because that would be part of a program where, I mean, Chapter 91 requires it to be signed. And, you know, some people remove those. And so it should be a whole effort about maintaining those Chapter 91 signs as they're pointing out, and then signing
Yeah.
thing, you know, the other ones.
Recommendation 1 addresses
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair,
Number,
Linda has showed up, so I'm turning it over to her.
Don't.
We are now on recommendation number 8, objective 1.
Did we skip everything else before that?
We public access. We've done all of the rest of that.
Okay, because there's an awful lot of yellow in here.
you've gone too far.
On too far? There's 5.
Okay,
Which objective? We're in objective 1. That was objective.
yeah.
We're objective number
Objective
1.
1,
Recommendation.
Recommendation 8.
recommendation 8, I have that both Steve and Phil want to talk about this one.
Right there.
Where? I don't have numbers on these. There it is.
I don't have any,
I got it.
Page 22.
yeah,
We're good.
I don't have any comment on 8.
My comment was that maybe we should include language where it says in support enforcement efforts regarding existing laws, regulations, and rules for public access, including public using private property. Because, you know, so much of the beaches are private property and the public uses them at the owner's benevolence, but people certainly don't pay attention to the rules and regulations there.
No, the minute you put in anything to do with private property in this thing, we're in trouble.
Yeah, because if you call
Don't
it
do
out, if you call it out, then that draws attention to it.
Yeah, don't do it.
It's sort of a unwritten, unposted thing where we have access and nobody usually makes us think about it, but
And you have one big beach easements and stuff. Don't leave the public out of this.
then you get the vet and advocate.
And it should be wetlands with an S.
Okay.
And I don't, you know, every time we use this word support, I have a problem.
Do you have a better word that you'd like to use?
I don't think support's the right thing for this kind of a plan. They should have enforcement. Maintain, increase, I mean, we all support it. The point is, a lot of it's not being necessarily enforced. Just because of time, effort, and money.
Ensure enforcement,
Yeah,
Enhance.
but support, I don't like the word support. Because this
Enhance.
whole thing
sort
is
of a squishy
supporting.
word.
Yeah, I can't stand it. I love the word require.
Oh, why not
Enhance.
require? I mean,
And take the word effort out.
Yep, we could take
You
it
know,
out.
you see where I'm headed with this? I don't like squishy and fluffy with the word enforcement, because enforcement is where we're having such difficulty with almost all of this, is because they don't have the staffing, they don't have the money, they don't have the teeth. So I'd rather just ensure enforcement regarding et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense to anybody?
Sure, we could do ensure enforcement.
And where you have this word enforcement throughout this document, check it.
Ensure? The word ensure or support?
Not, and take support out of everywhere in here. We want it done. It should be done. Ensure enforcement regarding existing laws, you know, take the efforts out, take the support out, and just get a little bit more forceful.
Okay,
It's been namby-pambied some of this stuff, and it's not gonna help us. As my
All right.
brain would say.
should we move on to objective 2? I think Phil wanted to talk about 1 through 7. So I think, let's see, is that,
Well, let's see, I just, I don't wanna talk because I don't think the committee has talked about any of the stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff in here that, I think we're seeing for the first time, and I just wanted to make sure we as a committee are okay with it.
I'm only
That's all.
Stephen, David. I'm only Stephen.
Phil, these were all reviewed by the whole group.
so we
Maybe
did
a
go
year.
through, do you remember the exercise we went through where we, you know, we went through all the different recommendations? So people that should have seen this. It's possible maybe you weren't at the meeting or,
I think,
We're missing words.
I mean,
that's
if-
all.
I think the committee should just, as we go through these, let's just make sure that we're okay with it. Not just,
Yeah, this is a real, public access is a real hot button issue here. For multiple reasons and at multiple access points, whether it's Albert Avenue, Surfside. Tom Nevers Pond, I mean, it's a real, and Peter knows most of these
And the
trails.
thing is, with sea level rise, some public access points are gonna go away as the water comes up and,
Makes it impossible.
I mean, think about what's the one on, off of Holbrook Ave, Henry Street. You know, it's just up over the dune like that.
Yeah.
And the water eventually comes over that. It comes back to the street. And those people have beachfront property, then I guess it would have to go all the way back to the end of Henry, but.
Well, you and I remember the no-name storm, we were down there in kayaks, and every single one of those access points was underwater.
Yeah. So,
Well, the word "for" is missing, inventory and map potential for new public access points.
anything else on one?
Yeah,
yeah, I would think you just. I mean, you'd be reaching out to the Roads and Right of Way Committee
that and
for,
plus a
for
public
that
private,
inventory, they'll have that.
right,
plus it's gonna be a public-private partnership for this.
And they'll also probably have places that they are working on to get access,
Not on Holbert at the moment.
but.
well, we have a couple on Holbert we're looking at.
We're trying to fix them so we can actually get
Well-
access to them. Were they planted in the middle of them?
No, I
Fenced
think
them?
they. I think we're. I think we can go on to number 2.
Oh.
All right,
And the word should probably be shall.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yes, you did. There's a big difference between may, will, shall, and should. On legally, anyway.
okay. In terms of wordsmithing, do we want to do that now or?
Yeah, remember, we weren't gonna wordsmith, Linda.
Yeah, well, if I see a word that bothers me, I bring it up, because otherwise I have to go back through it all again. I just, the word support, get rid of it. And efforts.
Okay, I'm okay with 2.
We support that.
With number 2, you're okay?
If you use the word support, you're supposed to say something.
Where did I see that again? The word support in here? Improve, I like that. All
At
right,
some point, there could be too much access.
never.
I think, can we go to 3?
Yep.
Hold on. What is this in parentheses here? I'm all about increasing access. What is that comment?
So this was provided by somebody else. Although somebody from the committee.
Well, that's not staying in there, right?
No, it's just a comment. Does anybody remember if I normally put who wrote it, and I guess I didn't in this case. Does anybody remember if they wrote this?
It's hard to figure out where the tipping point is since there's so limited access at the moment.
Okay, so I mean, that's not gonna stay in there, but yeah, you know, potentially writing something in there about there being a balance.
I think number 3 is a problem.
Okay, on to
I
number
think-
3.
Kim?
Yep.
I think that that comment was some discussion that we had during the meeting that Steve and I were talking about the balance. If I remember correctly, that's where that came from.
Okay. Maybe we put something in there about making sure there's a balance.
Well, we were talking about competing uses and balance and, you
Yeah.
know,
I would leave it out. Because we don't have a balance now.
Well,
and I don't know if
the
we'll
red
ever
thing
get
is
the
just a
balance.
comment. That's not part
Yeah,
of the.
I just don't want to put
recommendation.
anything into the
No,
actual
no, that's
text.
just a comment.
the balance that we were talking about was that there are places for people to water ski, there are places for people to sail, there are places for people to kayak. That was the balance that we were talking about in competing uses on the water sheet.
I know every spot to water ski. Including public health. I think we have an issue here with number 3.
Okay, number 3. So I have Steve and Phil.
I'm good now. I don't have a comment.
Okay,
I
I
don't
have a
understand
problem.
what number 3 is supposed to accomplish.
Yeah. And the
Well,
select board
I
has to
do. I
accept these
mean,
easements.
You know, it's, at least from a SHAB perspective, and that's for Dave to say, but, you know, to encourage public access on their properties. Wait, that's 4.
No, they got require here.
I think number three is referring to something like the development of Wilkie Square and having something like this to say when there's a new major development on the waterfront that the town requires, you know, and chapter 91 requires this, you know, public access.
Well,
Right.
what I'm looking at is in number 3, including new launch sites. And
Yeah,
that's,
no.
you know, that's, Dave will back me up. We've been looking for a new boat ramp site. For as long as Dave has been involved on the water on the island. As long as- So that should stay in there.
Well, I think that Steve's point is fair. In other words, if there is new development on the waterfront.
Well,
That's not directly on the waterfront.
the other thing,
Directly on the water.
again, let me remind you how we got here. Phil, it was you that said possibly someday there was going to be some property come available and that it could be considered for public access and a launch site, et cetera. And that's how this sentence was developed.
Okay, so that's what it was getting at then.
Right.
think
And
that-
it includes what Steve was saying about
Okay,
you don't want to pass up any opportunity to comment on any project.
There's 2 words that need to be changed. When appropriate, the town should continue to pursue and not require. Maybe instances like Wilkes Square
Yeah, I
does
think
not have
that's-
any direct waterfront property involved with that project. And including or such as, not including.
yeah, I think it was the wording that I was a little concerned
Yeah.
about. I think pursue is fine, yeah.
Pursue public access easements and
Okay.
then say such as new launch sites, da, 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 da.
Okay, I think that's good, if we change the wording there.
No, it's not actually these groups that do that. The select board has to accept these easements. So you might as well add the select board to that list of responsible parties. Because nothing's happening unless the select board decides that they wanna, tell town council. And they want to accept these easements.
yeah,
And-
one
and I-
One quick thing just about the responsible parties is that Jeff did send me a new list of responsible parties for all of these. And so I need to include those in here.
Did
And
you
I
include
would,
this one?
I would request that SHAB be, or
This one.
Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board gets added there too, because we are involved in some of this stuff.
The
Yep.
one big beach thing is, it's definitely, select board. And town council. Okay, is everybody all right with this one now?
Yeah,
Number 4. So in parentheses, this was a comment somebody provided.
Yeah, I agree with the comment.
I mean, doesn't chapter 91 just coastal property owners, I mean, isn't chapter 91 making sure of that, or is that only when chapter 91, when you need a chapter 91 license?
Yeah.
Right,
Well-
when you update or a new property owner comes in and wants to do something different, then it triggers the requirement for public access or monies to be allocated to other public access in lieu of direct public access.
I don't like the way this is worded for so many reasons. We're encouraging, when they don't have an easement, we're encouraging coastal homeowners to allow people to trespass on their properties. You know what the liability is on that?
I
So this is
think,
not, I think it's maintain.
I
public
think
access.
this recommendation grew out of the idea of the One Big Beach program and continuing the spirit of that. So continuing to work with private homeowners to obtain public access. I don't think it was suggesting that it'd be, illegal public access. But
But then you gotta reword this one entirely then,
Is this number 4?
yeah,
correct.
cause this ain't gonna happen the way it's worded. And that's just gonna raise red flags. Because some people, through their largesse, will allow people to walk across their beach. They don't have to, if it's not a chapter 91 thing. But they have. But I don't want to encourage anybody through this document to go ahead and let people trespass. So that has to be rewritten and with accessing legal easements, that's where I'm after with 4.
Yeah, I agree with Linda. I mean, I don't know the town. I don't know who in the town is gonna do that unless somebody is, privy to some information that comes to them, secondhand or something like that. But I agree. I think it has to be reworked.
If at all, if it's in there at all, like that. Cause number 5 is chapter 91.
Which is where I think you need to have the most teeth.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think we have to, enforcement of chapter 91, existing chapter 91 licenses is a huge problem. With one guy in the office up at the state, he doesn't have time to look at us. They're looking elsewhere, North Shore elsewhere, Plum Island, et cetera, et cetera. What do you want to do with this? We got to do something about enforcement.
Weren't you looking into something as a local initiative?
Where Concom brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, we've always talked about having kind of a local version of chapter 91.
And I still think we should pursue that. Should we put that in here?
The last
it's-
sentence of this recommendation gets at that. The identical language to the chapter 91 license should appear in the town and state permits, allowing either to enforce the conditions. That was the purpose of that sentence. So if we need
Right.
to change it, we
Right.
can. but
Beef
that
it
was
up.
captured.
And it's included in the administration and coordination section too.
Yeah,
I mean, we all looked at that for a long time, and DEP is telling us there's no way they're going to allow the locality to enforce Chapter 91 conditions. It's just not going to be allowed. But as Kristen points out, the way you can do it is just simply to parallel their conditions of their licenses in the local decision, and then you can enforce the local decision.
Right, okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
you just take the chapter 91 language and incorporate it in their Concom permit?
Yep.
I see, okay. If it's doable, it's doable.
Yeah, and in special permits. I mean, if there's a planning board decision as well.
I mean, the only way that we ever had enforcement was when there were some egregious situations, and normally a number of them, because I remember Liz Kula Harris, who was the director of regulation at that time, and she came in, and I think we looked at 10 or 15 sites, but it was like an accumulative punishment measure. But I don't even know if they have the people to do that now.
Nope.
And they acknowledge that, but
Right.
they don't believe the law allows them, the way the statute is written, that it would allow them to have somebody else enforce. It just, the authority just doesn't exist.
So Jeff, would that mean that you'd do a Concom bylaw or regulation change to include that?
I think you'd be better off to do a new bylaw and not put it directly
Into
to the
ours.
Concom,
Yeah.
because some of these areas may not be subject to Concom jurisdiction. They don't always overlap.
Okay, so who would have jurisdiction then?
I think whoever the town designated at the time.
Oh, okay, all right, so like a whole nother entity.
Yeah,
Or you.
I'd like that job.
So- I mean, I honestly think that the bigger problem in some of these cases isn't conditions being met. It's probably the like tenfold on the existing licenses of places that aren't licensed. That should be, right? Like there was a whole amnesty program before, but there's huge swaths of downtown that are subject to chapter 91 jurisdiction, none of which have chapter 91 licenses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's,
Unless they
And-
come
and
in.
The other thing too is I think that in some cases, when they do the initial construction and they put up the right fancy dance signs with the arrows and all the restrictions and all the stuff, that's fine. But 3, 4, 5 years later, or 2 or 3 owners later, it all goes by the wayside.
Well, there's a lot of chapter 91s that are blocked by foliage, fences, gates. All kinds of stuff. That,
Right.
you know, that's tough for the town to keep up with here. Did we ever get a list of every one of them? I thought I saw one for Nantucket.
Yeah.
We should probably
It
just
exists.
sort of have a look-see to see how, I can tell by the aerial if they blocked them.
well, not all of them also require a public, they can vary quite a bit
Yeah.
for what their public component is.
Because I looked at every chapter 91 license, all the way down Hulbert and all the way down Easton Street for a project we had, the one in between the Breakers and the White Elephant. I pulled up every single one of them. None of them are the same,
They vary quite a bit.
as well as bulkheads.
So is there
Okay.
anything different that should be done to this recommendation, or are we good with it? And again, you know, this isn't your last time to look at the recommendation. We're obviously going to create the whole draft plan, and if you have, you know, wordsmithing edits or what have you, you can just send them over.
But you understand the comments that we're making so far about this section?
Yep.
All right, anything else on this one with anybody? Okay, number 6.
So I
Talked
think
about years. You know, you could drive from the shipyard past Marine Lumber all the way to Hayes's property. There was a road on the harbor.
Spruce Street.
Well, Fruit Street goes this way now, but it went this way and this way before. You could see car on it in the 1938 aerials. So I mean, it's pretty cool. But that's gonna require an awful lot of permits, even do a raised boardwalk. But we've talked about that at the planning department for decades, about a raised harbor walk.
Yeah, then the Friends of the Creeks will come back to life and beat you down.
You can shove it. But,
Tricia Loring and the like,
yeah, but she's dead. So he's not saying
she'll come out of the
anything.
grave.
But, that was, we even had a little drawing of the thing at one point. Is this what you have in mind here? That kind of a walk?
I think some of these recommendations come out of the public comments from all our public meetings too. You know, people want kind of thing. It's come up in the past, so it was included because the public reached out to us about it.
Yeah, it was mentioned a number of times. And also, I think as a committee, we talked about it and a number of people expressed interest in that.
A lot of permitting, which we looked into back in the day, but it would be a fantastic thing to do.
Is that something that the BPAC explores?
They can be a part of this. Because they already got the railroad trestle for bikes and walking. That's the
And the land bank has,
Consu.
the land bank has life rights to the Odison property. They've
Yeah.
already given them the money, and when the Odisons go by the way, then that cedes to the land bank. So
Yep.
that's one more
There's
step,
another one strip.
going from the rotary into town, off the road.
I think it's a fantastic idea. It's just implementation is gonna be tough.
Well, you have the steamship authority right in the middle of that.
Well, it was on the south side of that. It was mostly coming out of Commercial Street. Hooking up with the bike, with the trestle, and then keep going along the waterfront there and not back out onto Orange Street. It was all the way out to the park now. That's where the road used to go. It's pretty cool to look at the old pictures. So Model Ts can get anywhere. But I think there's not much to say about it. Anybody want to change anything in it?
No,
Okay,
No,
Okay.
number 7. Didn't we cover this earlier in this section?
I just mentioned that one of the ones above had relevancy. But yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing, at one time, I know Dave had,
I'm not going here.
when he was harbor master, there was a plan to have a gangway and a float at Pulpus Harbor and enhanced,
Too shallow.
launch capabilities, but I remember from covering that, that it's so shallow. It's shallow
Yeah.
now. It's really hard to launch. You have a really full tide.
Yeah.
So that's right, Dave. Is that right?
yeah,
Yes.
we were gonna have a small finger pier with a ramp and a float and yeah, just money for dredging and it's just too shallow for too long. You'd have to dredge and it's all eelgrass and it's full of cohogs. So it's, it's just one of those things. It's a nice idea, but you never get it permitted.
I would take this whole reference to the jetties out of here. You still have Pelegs Wharf south of that public water. That's still in the ground. You can still see it on some of the old aerials. That was a big boat, big boat. But there may be other sites. And if we put this in here, I have gotten nothing but people bitching at me every 5 seconds when they heard about this. I don't want to throw this whole thing out with the bathwater here.
The reason that Dave advocates for that, and that I do as a member of, as chairman of CRAC, is that probably none of us in this room and none of your constituents are bitching at you about it will be alive. So we put it out there so that here's an idea that we thought of. And of course you can put on the record, we at the time didn't like this idea and we didn't push for it hard, but we thought we were forethinkers enough to not omit it. Just because we don't like the idea now doesn't mean that later in the history of Nantucket, in the future of Nantucket, it won't become an idea that could help.
And I thank you, Peter. And also I've talked to people who think it's a possibility. Number one, it was also called out in the 1980 fisherman, can fishing be revived with an actual drawing of where I'm talking about in a published report. And again, as Peter points out, I've exhausted the land possibilities of any of these types of things. And I think if you can incorporate a public fishing pier, which we do not have, a boat ramp, which we need a second one in town, and the possibility of some type of alternative to the steamship or the Highline dock. I think in the future, with coastal resiliency and population and et cetera, this can be substantiated. Like I said, somebody did an in-depth study of 4 sites in 1980. Tara gave me the report. I have it. And this location is literally in that report.
Sarah, do you want to send it out to everybody else? We can try.
I've sent the screenshots of it, and I'll certainly do it again.
Well, Tara has the report, then she can send it to Jeff and he can get it to us.
Well, I have to give it back to Tara, but I certainly can do that.
You have it.
It's a hard copy. It's
It's our copy. We have to scan it.
I'm sure there are loads of things that exist now in Nantucket that have even stiffer resistance than you're putting up, Linda, and that over time they evolved into something that made sense. But this is one of those things.
You're gonna have to get past the Concom to drive a truck across that beach over those
That's
kids. The
that's
handicap
fine.
accessible beach.
If
That's your-
if
The
if you
handicap
read-
accessible water beach.
you're
if
thinking
you
about-
read if you read the information that I've sent you and the photographs that I've sent you from Oak Bluffs, it can be done. It was done.
Not by this
So,
Concom.
Linda, you're thinking right now about the Concom that exists right now today. Yes, of course.
Probably not gonna get any better.
What would we have to do now to probably not happen? But in the future, you don't know. That's why putting this out there as an opportunity for something that we might do. We're not saying we're doing it now, but it could be something, it should be on the table at least.
don't think
Also,
there's-
Kim,
Yep.
Right.
didn't we agree when you and I and Jack spoke about the recommendations from the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board that, for instance, right where your cursor is right now, wouldn't we put the reference to the formal letter and recommendation from the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board? So the public would have, because it's going to be published as an appendix, it would have the discussion and the logic that Peter and I are trying to bring forth here as reference.
We definitely can.
Yeah, and Kim, this recommendation in full flower appears in the commercial waterfront section or the administration coordination section, I forget. So we're going to be coming back to this, and that's what Dave is referring to, where we really talk. It's not a lot of detail, but this recommendation is really about a boat ramp, and then with, as an aside, maybe there's a possibility as part of a larger project to put the boat ramp out near the jetty. But we make a full recommendation, full-blown recommendation about that larger project that Dave is referring to. And it came to us from SHAB. That was their recommendation that this plan include that. That's why it's in there.
Plus,
Hope I'm 6 feet
again,
underneath.
what I've always learned about doing these projects is if you've got some battles to fight and you have some things to give, like a public fishing pier, a second boat ramp, a commercial, albeit small, but a commercial fishing supported structure. It, like I said, if you were just going out there to build another steamship dock, it'd be a hard sell. But a public access fishing pier funded by the Public Access Board, a boat ramp funded by the Public Access Board, a commercial pier, which we've talked about numerous times that we should have bought the boatyard and did one in 1992, but it's now a yacht club. No offense to anybody, but if you have some things to give, I think it's sellable.
Well, I hate it, but to go back to a wordsmith, put the word public in front of boat ramp and not in front of fishing. Because it's a public boat ramp and fishing pier.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Move it
Let-
over to.
last
So
one.
did we land on just leaving this as is, and then we'll talk about it more in the, I think it was the commercial waterfront section?
I'm just vehemently opposed to it, but there you go.
But you
And
have
that-
been all along, Linda, and we've tried to explain to you why that
No.
you gotta be thinking out of the box. And in 1980, somebody was thinking out of the box.
Well, I'm thinking of kids and people and recreational boats being killed. That's what I'm thinking about, having spent my whole life also on the water and being married to somebody on the water, running the shipyards. I can't see it, but I'm not gonna argue
Well,
about it.
I'm just gonna say one more thing, and I knew this day would come, but the point is that you have to be forward thinking, number one, and number two, if the entire plan was destroyed or not approved or whatever because of this, then I would be extremely surprised.
People are going bonkers about raising Easy Street. I mean, this would send them over the edge,
I don't
at
see
least
any
our
harm.
generation.
I don't see any harm in leaving this in.
Well, leave it in, but I am not supporting that, but go ahead. Let's move on. Anything else in this section? That was recommendation 7.
That's it for,
for that
public
section.
access.
A lot of
Okay,
this overlap this next section anyway.
yeah, so commercial and recreational fishing, I have recommendations 1, 2, and 3 that Phil would like to discuss. And then also I think Steve and Tara would like to, so let's just get into it because a number of people want to go through these. So recommendation 1.
I don't have anything more on 1.
Okay, and nothing else on 1 for anyone?
Well, some of that may involve private property owners. Especially the recovery. You have to work, and nowhere in here does it say work with private property owners. Shouldn't we include that kind of stuff in here? On some of this stuff? A public-private partnership? With property owners? Isn't that what we're gonna have to rely on private property owners to do any of this, a lot of this stuff? Should we sort of throw them something that we have to work with the private property owners? So it doesn't look
Right.
like we're doing it with a hammer.
You just said that earlier, and it made good sense. Again, that may be the only source of possibility. I don't understand what elevating the ramp at Children's Beach means.
Well, let's stay on recommendation 1 first.
Well, it's right below that. It's in recommendation 1.
Go down the,
Yep.
oh, I see it there. Yeah, I see it there, but let's stay with the
Yeah.
actual language. I mean, where you can
What's
put
that?
in, where you can, and it involves private property owners. Put in public-private partnerships and working with private property owners. You gotta throw that stuff in here where appropriate.
Yeah, another site, if we're gonna throw in private, I mean. Is the UMass Fuel Station, because they have the road that goes right,
Right to it.
it becomes a dirt road and then a grass path and it goes past the little shack, but it does go right down to the beach.
Yeah.
And this line in here about, unreported taking of shellfish. There are scallopers that Dave knew of they'd go out and get their limit, drop it off at the field station, someone would pick it up, then they go back out and get another limit, and then show it legit at the pier and go,
Yeah.
hey, look, I got my 5 boxes.
Yeah, that was 70s and 80s though, Peter.
Yeah, I think it'd be a little bit easier now, but because you don't have as many guys, and I'd like to think that I had my share of bandits, but it sure made for interesting times.
I know Alan did, because I worked for him for 8.5 years. Just-
Okay, so just to clarify, are there changes we should make here?
Yeah, just throw in
I-
the private property, working with private property owners, public-private.
Yeah, well,
partnership.
the public partnership,
Mhm.
those words I think need to be,
All
interlaced as
Yep.
often as you can.
As often as you
and-
can throw it in here.
And again, if somebody could help me with elevating the ramp at Children's Beach, it was rebuilt a couple years ago and it was
Yeah.
elevated, and I don't know what elevating it would mean, but
Yeah,
We have.
we can strike, as far as I'm concerned, we can strike that.
We have seen it go up right underneath it, though, when, the no-name storm, it ran right up on it. But we don't, have
Well, That's
it's-
why there's a floodgate there now, but I don't know, you can't elevate the ramp.
Any higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, take it out.
all right.
But it might be a reference to, sea level rise, because eventually people are bitching about, raising Easy Street, raising Broad Street. But that's right on the water there, so you may want to be raising the boat ramp, depending on what else.
Oh,
is being
I see what you mean. So if the street elevation was
Yeah.
raised, I see, you would raise the top of the ramp to meet that. I see what you mean.
It'll be
Yeah, I'm
going
just-
downhill.
It's on the same line of thinking with the pier, Dave, looking ahead, seeing what might be.
Yeah,
putting
you're
something
gonna,
out there
right.
And saying that we might want to do this, so it should be in there.
Well, then add in the base paragraph, particularly, response to sea level rise. So that would make raising, the ramp at Children's Beach make more sense.
Right. And
So
then
add
you're gonna
something
have
like
to,
that. Yeah.
and then you're gonna have to add the resiliency people under responsible parties too.
Yeah, so you gotta flesh this one out a little bit, because most of what you're talking about here is gonna be because of sea level rise. Okay, anything else on that one?
Okay, recommendation 2.
Okay.
So I think I have, Steve would like to discuss this, and Tara did make a comment about shifting the percentage of what is currently available to accommodate commercial waterfront uses as a priority.
My que-
As opposed to recreational?
As opposed to expanding and adding additional sites for more boats, just shifting a percentage, taking some away from recreation.
I have a big problem with that.
We have a problem with a lot.
Well, I've just been a recreational boater, but had 7 boats and married to one, so I don't know.
Just a suggestion for everyone to consider.
Who says what, when, and how much? Or explore, maybe?
Explore the expansion of the availability.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
I
better.
think explore is a better word.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there may be a tipping point or a good balance here, but you gotta explore it.
Because it may not always be scallops, it might be something else that we do,
Concord,
be-
conchs, maybe anything,
kelp, whatever.
kelp, yeah.
Would it be explore the availability of expansion?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think explore would probably be appropriate because as I recall, another part of this, we're trying to figure out the capacity of the harbor and get an inventory of it. And if it shows that we're already over capacity, then finding more space could be a moot point. But
Yeah.
my other question was, what are the special conditions in Chapter 91 licenses at the end of this recommendation?
Yeah, that confused me.
Well, I think that's the heart of the recommendation, though. I think what you're doing is saying if Chapter 91 licenses a docking facility, that as Tara is suggesting, what you're asking for is some percentage of that docking to be affordable dockage for commercial or recreational fishermen.
But mooring spaces doesn't have anything to do with chapter 91 land. And you're talking about mooring spaces too.
Yeah, well, that you could, I mean, that's seems to me totally within the purview of the town. The mooring space, since you issue all of the permits for that.
Moorings.
I think it goes hand in hand with the Army Corps of Engineers too, doesn't it, Dave?
And what you're talking about is mooring your boat
Out
to
there.
something on the land. It doesn't
Okay.
say in the harbor. Isn't
Yeah.
that, this was meant,
Okay, it's just confusing if you're just, we were always on a
you
mooring.
could say tying up or something. Mooring makes you think you're out there.
You're out
Yeah,
there in
true.
the water.
And
That's my
tie it
problem.
Actually, Peter's correct. The correct nautical term is when you tie up your boat in a slip, you're actually mooring it to the pier.
Yeah, but make this clear that you're not hanging out in the middle of point one on a mooring kind of thing.
Okay, so
Yep.
tying up,
Yep, tie-up spaces, sure.
Anything else in this one, guys?
Just so I clear this up, if you get in with the core and you start talking about commercial, you gotta have a permit. And the only entity that has a permit for commercial moorings is the town of Nantucket.
Mhm.
all right. Number 3, I have Steve would like to talk about this one.
No, I didn't have a comment on that.
No, did Phil?
No.
We'll just, yeah, okay. So maybe we're all right with number 3?
Just from a female point of view, fishermen, men
Mhm.
know what they're talking about. What do they call them now? Fisher people?
Fishers.
Could
Fishers,
we change the word
fishwife.
from gas to fuel?
Mhm.
Change it to what?
Fuel. Because primarily what we're talking about is diesel fuel.
Fuel, yeah. Do something with that word fishermen, but diesel fuel, yeah, fuel's a big problem here. Affordable,
Well,
affordable.
I'm gonna get
we're coming.
back on
We're coming to that.
the chapter 91 horse again with Great Harbor Yacht Club because they're required by their permit to provide fuel.
Good. Well, at the increased price. That's why they're all going to the Cape. Are we still on 3?
3 or
Now just, yeah, understand the lighting on Nantucket has a dark skies component. And there's an actual statute in the town code that you have to abide by the dark skies component, and it got even tougher last year when they voted that thing in and improved the lighting at Town Pier.
Full
But it
cutoff.
still has to meet the dark skies bylaw.
Well, can I throw in here that when the lighting on the town pier has been renewed under the latest reconstruction permit, and it's greatly improved now. So we may not need improve the lighting at town pier.
Okay,
okay. Do we still need to provide additional tie-ups?
I think so.
I think you always need the opportunity
need
to have additional types,
Yeah, you know,
be it for transients or dinghies or whatever.
Mhm.
yeah. Dinghies, particular. Looks like a cluster down there in the summer.
Well, she's working on regulations to improve that.
Yeah,
we've
you know, looks like they're on top of each other. Okay, anything else on that one, guys? Okay, recommendation number 4,
Fighting words,
fighting words.
at least for some fishermen. Fishers,
They're just going over the Cape, so. Well, there's the gas.
Or does that mean that there are fishermen that do not want to have it go up?
there's one I can name, and I'm not gonna name them.
Will the
Yeah.
guy to take the shellfish from people?
Is that what you're saying,
necessarily
Peter, that
interested.
there are people that do not want?
There's people, there's people on both sides,
Yeah,
but
And,
given,
and with the current size of the fleet and the catch, I think everybody's found their own,
yeah,
sought their own level of being able to sell individually with UPS, et cetera, et cetera. So the co-op thing, like Peter says, the co-op thing is just, it's all over the road.
they've
Strike it.
talked about it for years.
I would- I don't wanna, I would like to
I would leave
recommend
it
not
in.
striking it, just
Yeah.
because if you leave it in here as explore, the fishery is dying, but if there is a chance to reinvigorate the fishery and get young people involved, they're gonna need some sort of shanty or co-op that's like subsidized to help them sell their shellfish. And so I think it's a good thing to leave in here, whether it's low priority, just so that it's in here
It's got some
for
language
Okay.
the
here.
new
No, I didn't-
generation.
Tara, I don't disagree with you one bit, but the other benefits of a co-op is if the co-op is successful, they can get loans to buy a new outboard if the outboard pukes in the middle of the season. I mean, there's all kinds of positive things for a co-op. So I totally agree that it should be left in here. I'm just saying it, the discussions are all over the road.
This is true.
And they have been
Okay.
for probably
I
40
think that's a
years.
fair point. Keep it in.
I'm gonna leave out of the minutes that our town shellfish biologist said that the fishery is dying.
I didn't say.
Well,
I heard you
can I
say-
ask a question? My camera's not working. It's Rachel. So regarding this, I do have a lot of fishermen who are actively discussing like the lack of facilities in my ear. So I'm wondering, is there a group that's working on that?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, about possibility of a commercial.
For a co-op, there's a group of fishermen that have been talking about it, sort of hush hush. Cognizant of the others that are against it, but that group that have been talking about it haven't, as far as I know, really gone anywhere with it.
It's been talked about at the Shellfish Association like a few years ago,
Yeah.
maybe last year, but most recently, and also at the community foundation level a bit.
Well, that's interesting.
That's really helpful, Tara. Thank you.
I apologize, I have to leave, but.
I apologize for being late.
What time did you get
When did you
here?
get here?
2.
2?
All right, because Peter has to
Okay.
put that down in the minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so anything we need to change about that, or?
Just leave it there.
I think that's fine.
I think it's fun.
I'm into the affordable gas thing.
Yeah, we talk about that later.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
using
that is just huge.
Okay. good.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead and start objective 2?
We have recommendation 5.
Yeah, recommendation 5,
I
somebody
don't have
said
it.
to just
Since I was all crossed off.
totally strike this.
Yeah.
That it already is happening, I think.
Are we striking 5?
Yeah, I've got it struck in my copy from
Yeah,
last
if
time.
you guys are all okay with that,
Yeah.
that's
We
already,
talked- We talked about it in the other section, yeah.
Yeah, we can go through objective 2. That'll take us to 2:30.
yep.
Okay.
Okay, I have, Bill wants to talk about 1 and 2. Yeah, Bill wants to talk about 1 and 2, and Steve has a couple comments in here as well about SHAB.
All right. Is everybody okay with, we're okay with the objective, then we've already done that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to recommendation 1.
Yeah, recommendation 1.
I don't have anything about recommendation one.
It's already, you know, it's to a certain extent, it's already happening, and you have, we have the apprentice program in Natural Resources Department and the scholopers. I know that one scoloper, Dylan Wallace, he apprenticed 3 people this winter. It's a 20-day program. You go with somebody, you go with an experienced scoloper for the allotted number of days, and that person guides you and teaches you the scallop fishery. And when you're done, then you go ahead and get your, go out on your own. So to a certain extent, it's already going on, but it should definitely be
And
enhanced.
Tara does it at the hatchery.
Right.
They're
Sheila
not all
teaches,
great. That's the
Sheila
problem.
teaches a safe boating course for kids.
I think it should be part of their curriculum,
I think
frankly.
Egan-
We live on the water here.
Should we mention Egan in here too? Because I know they do something along these lines.
Well, it's mentioned,
Is Egan in there?
says,
Yeah,
and then high school with Egan Maritime to
Oh,
connect
okay,
the younger
okay.
generation with the island shellfish.
Okay.
I,
Well,
yeah,
and
It shouldn't
Shab,
be, it shouldn't be
Shab
just
has
training
made
kids about water. It should
presentations
be-
to the school.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be just training kids about water. I want, and training them to scallop and stuff like that. My problem is that we're surrounded by water. These kids are out at the beach, they're on the water. It should be part of their curriculum to have a little section, whether it's through whatever, the health thing, or some other thing about learning, because there used to be a whole history section of Nantucket there, because I taught it a few times. But teach them about the waterfront, the preciousness of the shellfish, the this, the that, the this. That should be at least through middle school to the high school,
I believe Egan is there. I don't know what the extent,
younger
but
kids.
they shifted to education a number of years ago
Yeah.
and stopped all but a few of their books that they still.
Yeah, but they do it in the grade school. I think there's a 5th grade class that takes these trips down there. But they really need to get a grip on the middle school and high school kids as a part of their curriculum. So I don't want to just concentrate on those who want to go and work on the waterfront. We need to get a clear appreciation and understanding of the waterfront. So maybe when they go somewhere, they won't throw a beer can out in the water. This is the component that's missing from a lot of these kids that go on the water or go to the beach. They don't get it.
I
Because we don't
also-
do anything.
Can I add one more thing? I would add that in accordance with what Linda's saying, so I have kids that have gone through the boater safety course. It always fills up. Missed it this year for Eli. I'll try again for next year. 2 sessions, like done. It's like trying to sign up for community sailing. So that could be expanded, and the one thing about that course, which is great, is that it's, it gives kids a starting point. But it would be absolutely incredible if there was something that was actually on the water, there was actually an ability that for people to teach youth of Nantucket how to operate boats and or be on the water in respectful ways. Because a lot of these kids are then going out in high school and they end up having a little whaler, either because their families have them or something, and then they're taking them out on their own. And it's,
But
Well,
they just give
Steve,
them a basic appreciation of the waterfront, even if they never get in a boat. They need to understand that we are surrounded by water. We have a finite scallop population, conking and everything else. And this is what a horseshoe crab does and what it looks like. I mean, there's just, Mariah Mitchell does their little thing down there, and I've taken all my kids down there when they were young. Maybe Mariah Mitchell can help out with this, but we need to get into the high school and make them understand this is your environment and you're destroying it by leaving more than footprints in places.
Steve, go.
Yeah, this may not be the right spot to do it, but since we started this whole process, just recently they passed a law in the state of Massachusetts that everyone's going to have to get a license at a certain point, including adults, and it's being phased in over the years. So I don't think we need to go back to a section to talk about somebody coming up with the on island being able to provide that type of education so people can get their licensing.
And what I was gonna say in addition to that is at the school level or even at the safe boating level, you know, somebody from Maria Mitchell or somebody from Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, we're already doing it in the public schools. You know, could give 45 minutes on exactly what Linda is talking about. You know, and I just, again, to get the knowledge out there, and under responsible parties, we need to, however we wordsmith it for all schools, not just public schools.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the privates, we've been invited into the private schools. I wish some of us had more time, and this could be a very rewarding thing to get this information out there.
Yeah, and I think the word missing in this whole section is education. It's been very specific, but the word education needs to be part of this section. Educate, educate, and educate.
Yeah, and one thing to note is that, so this is specifically under the commercial, what is it? Commercial and recreational fishing section. So I think that's why this recommendation is geared towards, the shellfish, but, you know, I think all of this sounds right and good. I'm just wondering, maybe some of it gets moved into a different section since it's.
It might get moved down into the boating section. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. But again, as we've all agreed, some of this stuff you can't, especially about the education, I don't think you can say it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my whole thing all along. Education,
Do
education.
we want to make reference to Mass Maritime? I'm sure Mass Maritime would be interested in coming over to have some sort of, you know, introductory thing as to what they offer.
Well, a lot of our kids go to Mass Maritime.
A bunch of our kids do.
They come for the high school kids, and we've had Mass Maritime students work for us for years,
Yeah.
but them coming over here specifically, I don't know that they would. I don't know that they wouldn't, but
That's good. But back to this word public, up in the main paragraph, take the word public schools out and just put Nantucket schools, and the same
Yes.
thing, the list down here, take out the word public and just say Nantucket schools.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Recommendation number 2.
I just have that Tara had noted she likes this.
Cool. Great. There's that word men again. Is there another word other than fishermen?
Fishers,
Just fishers?
but you know, fisherman is meant to be a generic term.
It is. They call
Oh,
it
yeah,
people who
fishers.
covers.
Just
in
like,
San
just
Francisco,
when you say,
not manhole covers.
guy, it's a generic term, you're a guy.
That's a
I'm
Jersey
guy.
thing.
Yeah,
Everybody's a guy.
I
Okay, so
mean, if
fishers.
you want to split the hairs, you can say young fishermen's and young fisherwoman's.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
So let's leave it at fishermen. People know,
What, fishers? Fishers?
No, just leave
No,
fishermen
like
alone.
fishermen.
It's people hole covers in San Francisco, not manhole covers.
Okay.
Political correctness is just.
Man
too much.
overboard, they chase them.
Man overboard. Throw the man overboard.
All right.
Manhole covers?
Women
Oh.
hold, people hold covers in San Francisco. So stupid.
All right. Anything else
I
on
like it.
recommendation?
Anybody have any other things here? I like this.
Okay, 3, nobody noted as wanting to talk about. So assuming everybody's good with number 3.
Oh, you gotta do it.
We do mention public schools in here again. I don't know if it's all schools. Because it's the
Again,
Nantucket High
everything's all
School job.
schools. Everything's all schools. They go to 9th grade at the moment at one of these schools.
Yep.
Okay, anything in 3, guys?
I think we have a good stopping point.
We're coming to the end of reviewing and updating the shellfish regulations, so.
Yeah. Okay, you wanna end there?
Sure, stop here.
2:27.
All right, we're about a little over halfway through.
Okay.
All right,
Great. When's the next meeting?
yeah, just checking my calendar here. The next
Deadline.
meeting would be
2 weeks.
it's April 14th. Ooh, I'm out
That's-
of the office that day. But maybe
Isn't
Jack,
that Patriots Day?
maybe I think is the next week Patriots Day? I think
No,
that the marathon is the 21st.
it's usually Patriots Day.
It's usually the 19th.
Usually school
Ah.
vacation, school vacation's actually a week later this year.
We can do the 14th if Jack or Kristen wants to jump in my role.
I can certainly do that.
Okay.
That is cool.
Will probably run this a little more efficiently than me.
I doubt it. Doing great.
Understand that is an HGC deadline day. I'm gonna try to put everything in ahead of time, but that usually, as you know, is great chaos for me.
Okay, so
Okay.
we stick with the 14th.
Yep,
Great.
yep. That's really the only other option.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Peter,
Bye.
motion to adjourn.
Second.